Her tears hit the kitchen tile just as Vincent slammed the door shut. The sound cracked through the estate kitchen like a gunshot. Naomi stood frozen by the steel counter, one hand pressed to her cheek, the other clutching a broken dish towel soaked with broth and shame. Across the room, Vincent's men had gone quiet, their laughter dying under the weight of his glare. He had walked in expecting a late dinner and found her crying like someone had already taken something from her. Vincent's voice dropped to ice. Who did this? No one answered. Not at first. Naomi kept her eyes down, shoulders trembling, because she knew what happened to women who spoke too quickly in houses like this. One wrong name, one wrong accusation, and the punishment always found the weakest person in the room. But Vincent was already moving. He shut the kitchen door, locked it, and set the key on the table like a promise. Now there was no escape, no excuse, no audience to hide behind. Look at me, he said. Naomi did not move. Her silence was not obedience. It was survival. Vincent saw the red mark on her wrist, the spilled soup, the shattered bowl near the sink. Someone had hurt her here, in his house, under his roof. And if he let that stand, then every wall in the estate was a lie. He had built his empire on fear, but this was different. This was weakness dressed as order. He stepped closer, his shadow falling over her. Who hurt you? Naomi swallowed hard. Her answer came out thin, almost broken. It was Mrs. Harlan. The name landed hard. One of his oldest house managers. Trusted, protected, untouchable. A muscle jumped in Vincent's jaw. He had expected a servant's mistake, maybe a clumsy hand or a cruel guest. He had not expected betrayal from inside the house. For a second, the room felt smaller, as if the marble floor itself was holding its breath. Naomi finally lifted her eyes. Not to beg, not to accuse, just to tell the truth. Mrs. Harlan had humiliated her in front of the staff, accused her of stealing food, and slapped the bowl from her hands when she tried to explain. Then she had ordered Naomi to clean the mess on her knees. Vincent did not speak. That silence was worse than shouting. He crossed the kitchen in 3 measured steps, tore the service bell from the wall, and pressed it once. Sharp. Final. A summons, not a request. Within seconds, the staff gathered at the doorway, faces pale, uncertain, afraid. Vincent turned, his gaze cutting across them all. No one touches her again. The words did not echo. They struck. Naomi stood still, breathing through the pain, while Vincent faced the room like a judge who had finally seen the crime for himself. Then he looked back at her, and something in his expression changed. Not softness, not yet, but recognition. For the first time that night, she was not invisible. She was the reason the door had been locked. And in that silent kitchen, Vincent began to understand that protecting her would cost him more than anger. The fluorescent light above the prep counter gave everything a hard, merciless edge, turning the stainless steel sinks into mirrors and every tear on Naomi's face into evidence. The kitchen had gone quiet in the way only dangerous places could go quiet, when everyone understood that one wrong sound might become a sentence. A stockpot still simmered on the back burner. A timer ticked near the bread station. Beyond the locked door, the estate continued breathing with money, music, and lies. But inside that room, the balance had shifted. Naomi pressed the heel of her hand against her cheek, not to hide her crying now, but to steady herself. Vincent had already seen too much for denial to save her. The red mark along her wrist, the split seam near her collar, the way she flinched when footsteps moved too fast behind her. None of it belonged to clumsiness. None of it came from a hard day's work. He knew violence when it wore expensive shoes. Then, for the first time, she did something no one in that house expected from the maid. "Open the door," Naomi said. The words did not come out loud, but they landed harder than shouting. A few of the kitchen staff looked up in shock. One of the house managers, pale and stiff beside the pantry shelves, blinked as if she had misheard. Vincent did not move. His hand remained near the lock, his stare fixed on Naomi, measuring not her fear now, but her will. "If I open it," he said, voice low as stone, "you walk back into the same room with a man who touched you." Naomi swallowed. Her chest rose once, slowly. "If you don't, he will say I'm hiding because I did something wrong. That was the real wound. Not just pain, not just fear, reputation. In houses like this, innocence meant nothing if power decided the story first. A woman like Naomi could lose her job in one whisper, her name in one accusation, her future in one polished lie told over crystal glasses. Vincent had been prepared to punish someone. He had not yet understood that she was fighting for something blood could not restore. The room went still. "Say his name," he said. Her fingers curled at her sides. For a moment, the silence seemed to lean against her, asking whether truth was worth the cost. Then she lifted her chin. Adrian Moretti. Even the air changed. One of Vincent's captains, near the walk-in freezer, looked down at once. The house manager's face drained of color. Adrian was not just another guest. He was tied to a shipping contract Vincent needed signed by morning, a deal that would secure routes through Newark and protect half a year of movement on the East Coast. Money, influence, territory. A name like that did not fall lightly in a room full of witnesses. Vincent's jaw tightened once. Naomi saw it, and in that instant she understood the price of what she had said. If he chose business, she would be sacrificed cleanly, sent away with severance if he felt generous, buried under a version of events polished by richer mouths. If he chose her, he would set fire to more than a guest list. "Did anyone else see?" he asked. A younger dishwasher glanced up, terrified, then backed down. No one spoke. Naomi could have let the silence protect them. Instead, she made the second choice that changed the night. "He cornered me near the wine storage after dessert trays went out," she said. "Mrs. Bell from housekeeping heard me tell him no." She kept walking. The house manager shut her eyes. There was not only assault, but complicity. Not only a man's violence, but a system built to preserve his comfort. Vincent finally turned from Naomi and looked at the others, each face dropping under the weight of being seen. When he spoke again, his voice had become colder, more precise. "No one leaves this kitchen." A beat passed. "Call Mrs. Bell in here," Naomi said, surprising even herself. "And when that door opens, I want to be standing." The scrape of sensible shoes against tile arrived before the woman herself, crisp and measured, the sound of discipline built over decades inside a house where everyone knew their rank. Mrs. Bell entered the kitchen with her spine straight, silver hair pinned without softness, and the kind of expression that usually settled panic rather than fed it. Tonight, that expression faltered. Naomi was standing exactly as she had asked to be, one hand braced on the prep counter, eyes red but steady. Vincent stood beside the locked door, broad shoulders cutting off the only easy exit. Around them, staff members held themselves unnaturally still, as if even breathing too hard might place them on the wrong side of whatever was about to happen. Mrs. Bell took in the broken rhythm of the room in one glance. The bruise darkening near Naomi's wrist, the untouched dish towel on the floor, the chef staring at nothing, and Vincent's face, colder than the stainless steel around him. "What happened?" she asked. Naomi did not answer at once. The silence stretched long enough to become a test. Then she lifted her chin and looked not at Vincent, but at Mrs. Bell. "It wasn't just tonight," she said. "Someone has been warning me to keep quiet." The words changed the air. Not violence alone, then. Not one man losing control in a hidden corner. This had shape, planning, permission, a house that had taught itself where not to look. Mrs. Bell's mouth parted, then closed again. Vincent did not move, but something in him withdrew from anger into calculation. Rage could crush a throat. Calculation could dismantle an entire circle. "Who?" he asked. Naomi's fingers tightened against the edge of the counter. This was the price she had feared most. Not pain, but exposure. Bruises could be hidden under sleeves. Naming someone inside the estate meant sleeping under the same roof as people who smiled with trays in their hands and carried messages with their eyes. "I never saw a face when the notes came," she said carefully. "And no one said it plain. But whoever was knew my schedule, knew when I worked late, knew where I kept my phone." Mrs. Bell looked sharply toward the line cooks, then the pantry door, then the hallway beyond the service entrance. The household orbit, not the city outside Vincent's gates. The threat had been fed by someone with access. Vincent's voice dropped lower. "Notes. Naomi nodded. Folded into the linen cart. Under the sugar bin once. One in my locker. Her breath trembled, but her eyes did not. Always the same message in different words. Stop talking. Be grateful. Don't make trouble for yourself. A murmur nearly started among the staff, then died when Vincent turned his head. He didn't need to raise his voice. Fear had already done the work for him. What else? He said. For a second, Naomi hesitated. Then she reached into the pocket of her black apron and drew out a small thing no bigger than a matchbook, a stiff white laundry tag, bent at one corner. She had kept it the way wounded people sometimes keep proof, not because it protects them, but because being disbelieved feels worse. It was wrapped around the last note, she said. I didn't think it mattered until now. Mrs. Bell took it first. Her expression changed before she could hide it. Vincent saw that change. Tell me. The housekeeper swallowed. This tag comes from the upstairs pressing room, she said. We only use this badge for guest formal wear and senior staff uniforms. Senior staff. The room went so still it seemed to lean inward. Not a random hand, then. Not a frightened servant copying another man's cruelty. Someone close enough to move through the estate without question. Someone trusted enough to touch private spaces and leave no alarm behind. Vincent stepped away from the door at last, not in retreat, but with purpose. His gaze moved across every face in the kitchen, measuring loyalty like a blade tested for weakness. No one speaks about this outside this room, he said. Mrs. Morning light came cold through the high pantry windows, turning the black and white tile into a chessboard and every whisper into strategy. The kitchen, which had carried the metallic sting of fear only hours before, now moved with forced precision. Knives chopped, pans hissed, orders passed in low voices that died the moment Naomi crossed the room. Respect had not followed last night's silence. Attention had, and in a house like Vincent Moretti's, attention could be deadlier than contempt. Mrs. Bell delivered the change with the stiffness of someone obeying power she did not fully approve of. Naomi would no longer sleep in the staff wing. Her room had been moved to the east corridor, 2 doors down from Vincent's private office and under direct guard rotation. Her duties were restricted. No errands beyond the main house. No solo trips to storage. No one entered her room without permission. The words sounded like protection when spoken aloud. The faces around her said something else. A scullery maid dropped a stack of folded linen when Naomi passed. One of the drivers glanced up from the service entrance and looked away too quickly. At the far prep table, a footman muttered, "Must be nice," not quite under his breath. Another answered with a dry laugh. People get promoted for less. Naomi kept her shoulders square, though heat crept under her skin. Last night, she had asked to stand. This morning, she understood the cost of being seen standing beside power. No bruise marked her face now, but visibility had become its own kind of wound. Every set of eyes measured her against a rumor she had never invited. Pack only what you need, Mrs. Bell said. Naomi looked up. What if I need my old room? The older woman's mouth tightened. You won't be using it again. That answer landed harder than it should have. A bed in the staff wing had never been comfort, only routine. But routine was dignity to people who owned almost nothing else. Taking her out of that narrow room and placing her near Vincent's private hall did not make her safer in the eyes of the house. It made her different, untouchable to some, suspect to the rest. By noon, the rumor had spread beyond the kitchen walls and into the stone veins of the estate. A guard escorted her down the east corridor, carrying her small suitcase, and the hallway itself seemed to hold its breath. The carpets muffled every step. Oil portraits watched from dark-paneled walls. Brass sconces cast a low amber glow over polished wood that reflected power without warmth. This was not where maids belonged. That was exactly why whoever had heard her would notice. Naomi noticed it too. At the door to her new room, she stopped before the guard could turn the handle. "This makes me easier to watch," she said quietly. The man hesitated, caught between loyalty and honesty. From afar into the hall came the measured sound of expensive shoes on wood. Vincent did not raise his voice when he spoke. He never needed to. It makes you harder to reach. Naomi turned. His suit was charcoal, his face unreadable, but there was no distance in the way he looked at her now. Only calculation sharpened by concern. For them, she said, those are not the same thing. For a moment, the corridor went still. Even the guard lowered his eyes. Vincent stepped closer, close enough for his answer to belong only to her. Then let them look, he said. I'd rather smoke out a snake than leave it under the floorboards. The words were cold. The meaning was not. He was not just hiding her now. He was using his own protection as bait, drawing the unseen hand into the light. It was a dangerous kind of shelter, one that asked her to survive being watched from every direction. Naomi studied him and saw the truth beneath the control. He meant to protect her, even if it set the whole house whispering, even if it painted a target brighter than before. Rain tapped the long pantry windows with a patient, needling rhythm, and the sound seemed to tighten every nerve in the kitchen below. Copper pots hung motionless above the center island. Knives flashed and dulled in the pale light. The whole room wore discipline like armor, but fear still lived underneath it, hidden in lowered eyes and careful silence. By noon, the estate had settled into the kind of calm that only existed when everyone knew something was wrong and no one dared say it aloud. From a service entrance, a delivery boy in a red jacket stepped in with 2 butcher boxes and a florist's tube tucked under one arm. He looked barely 20, too thin for the rain, his sneakers leaving damp marks on the black and white tile. Mrs. Calhoun took the boxes first, scanned the invoice, then paused when she saw the tube had no vendor mark. Her mouth flattened. She slid the cap loose. Inside was a single folded sheet and a cheap silver bracelet. Not jewelry store silver. Drugstore silver. Tarnished at the clasp. Across the prep counter, Naomi stopped breathing for half a second. It was hers. No one else in the room understood what had just happened, but her face gave the object meaning before her mouth did. Vincent, standing near the stove in a charcoal suit with his cuffs still unbuttoned, saw the color leave her skin so quickly it looked as if the house itself had drained it out of her. He said nothing at first. He simply held out his hand. Mrs. Calhoun gave him the note. 3 words were written in block letters. You still hide. The kitchen went silent. Naomi took one step back. Not from Vincent. From memory. The bracelet trembled in his palm. Light as nothing, heavy as proof. He turned it once between 2 fingers and looked at her. Not with suspicion now, but with the hard focus of a man realizing the danger had a face from before he entered it. This isn't random, he said. No, Naomi answered, and the words scraped on the way out. That single admission changed the room more than a gunshot would have. Random cruelty belonged to gossip, chance, and small cowardice. This belonged to planning, to history, to someone who knew what would make her fold. Vincent dismissed the delivery boy with a glance. Mrs. Calhoun shut the service door herself and posted a guard outside without needing to be told. For the first time since he had locked one door to ask what hurt her, Naomi understood that the real door had never been wood. It had been this, the sealed place inside her where old fear still obeyed old power. She reached for the edge of the steel table until her knuckles blanched. I left Atlanta 3 years ago, she said quietly. I changed jobs twice. Names once. Not legally. Just enough to disappear where people like me disappear. Vincent did not interrupt. A breath later, neither did anyone else. There was a man, she said. Not a husband. Not family. He ran security for a councilman who liked girls to feel grateful before he liked them afraid. I worked banquet shifts at one of his fundraisers. I spilled wine on the wrong jacket. After that, he kept finding reasons to be near me. Her voice stayed level only because all the shaking had moved inward. Then I heard something I wasn't supposed to hear. Money. Judges. A witness being leaned on before trial. He saw me in the hallway. Her fingers tightened on the table. He smiled first, she said. That was the worst part. Men like that don't raise their voice when they know they don't have to. Vincent's jaw hardened, but he let her keep control of the telling. I tried to report it, Naomi said. The desk sergeant knew his name before I finished mine. A woman at the council office told me to stop making trouble if I wanted to keep working. Then my landlord got a call. My hours disappeared. By midnight, The estate had gone so quiet that the soft tick of the grandfather clock in the West Hall sounded accusatory. Light from Vincent's study cut a hard gold line across the dark floorboards, and inside that room the air held the clean scent of leather, paper, and the kind of money that usually kept ugly truths buried. Naomi's words had not left him. They had sharpened. The desk sergeant, the council office, the landlord, missing hours. Too many doors closing at once did not look like bad luck. It looked arranged. A burner phone, 2 ledgers, and a household payroll file lay open across the desk. Luca stood near the window, broad shoulders blocking the moonlight, while Mrs. Devereux sat ramrod straight in one of the green leather chairs, gloved hands folded as if discipline alone could keep the night from worsening. Vincent did not raise his voice. That made the room colder. "Names," he said. Luca slid a thin folder across the desk. The landlord got 3 payments over the last 6 weeks from a shell account tied to Calder Holdings. Mrs. Devereux's eyes lifted. Just once. That was enough. Vincent opened the file. Building records, vendor lists, campaign donations, a chain of polite transactions, each one legal enough to survive daylight, ugly enough to rot under scrutiny. Calder Holdings had been bidding against him for a port security contract for months. Publicly, they had lost ground. Privately, someone had found another way to push. Who at the council office? Vincent asked. A deputy clerk named Elaine Mercer, Lucas said. Her brother works compliance for Calder. The desk sergeant plays cards every Thursday at a club Calder's attorneys use for charity events. The words landed one after another, neat as nails into hardwood. Mrs. Devereux did not flinch, but her silence changed shape. Vincent noticed because he noticed everything when fury became useful. He turned 1 page farther and found the estate staffing schedules. Naomi's reduced hours were marked in red pencil beside a note authorizing temporary adjustment for discretion. No signature, only initials. MD. The room went still. Say it carefully, Vincent said. Mrs. Devereux removed 1 glove finger by finger, buying herself 3 seconds and wasting none of them. I made the adjustment, she said, not because I wished her harm, because Mr. Calder's assistant implied there would be consequences for this house if Miss Naomi remained visible. Luca shifted once, a dangerous movement. Vincent did not. You took instruction from an outside enemy regarding my staff. I took a warning, Mrs. Devereux said, her voice tightening for the first time. They knew her route home. They knew which pantry and trance she used, which mornings she was alone, which suppliers came and went. They knew too much. I believed reducing her hours inside the estate might reduce her exposure. Increased her desperation, Vincent said. The truth struck her then. He saw it in the way her chin lowered by half an inch. Not defiance. Guilt. Another file came out. Luca placed photographs on the desk. A black sedan outside Naomi's apartment. A man speaking to her landlord. Another shaking hands with one of the estate's temporary delivery contractors at the back gate. Vincent studied the last photo longest. The contractor wore the house crest on his jacket. Inside access, he said. Luca nodded. Not a permanent servant. Seasonal kitchen delivery rotation. Hired through Mercer Logistics. Mercer is a Calder subcontractor. There was at last. Not random harassment. Not one vile man acting alone, but a campaign. Pressure Naomi until she broke. Then use her fear, her silence, or her forced exit as proof that Vincent could not control his own house. Humiliate the weakest person near him, and the stain would spread upward. It was extortion in the language of reputation. Mrs. Devereux rose slowly. If dismissal is warranted, I will accept it. No, Vincent said. That single word stopped everyone. Not yet. He closed the folder and looked toward the dark hallway beyond the study door, where the estate slept under a false sense of order. Past 1 in the morning, the mansion carried that dangerous kind of silence that made every small sound feel arranged. Ice clicked once in the decanter on Vincent's study bar. Firelight moved in low amber bands across the paneled walls, touching the edges of framed oils, the brass clock on the mantel, the sealed folder still resting beside his right hand. Outside, Rain dragged thin silver lines down the tall windows. Inside, a decision had already been made. The kitchen was reset exactly as it had been. Copper pans above the island. The long prep table wiped dry. The service door unlatched. One lamp over the sink left on, casting a pale circle across black and white tile. Even the dish towel Naomi had twisted in her hands earlier had been returned to the counter, folded too neatly to be natural. Vincent did not believe in superstition, but he understood ritual. If humiliation had begun in that room, truth could be forced to return there too. Naomi stood near the butcher block counter, shoulders straight despite the strain gathering around her mouth. She had argued against it in a low, controlled voice. Not because she feared looking weak anymore, because she understood bait when she saw it. "You said you wanted a name," Vincent had told her. "And if the wrong person comes?" she had asked. His gaze had not moved. "Then we stopped pretending my house is blind." That was why she stayed. Not as prey, as witness. Two security men waited out of sight in the scullery, earpieces in, orders strict. No movement unless Vincent gave it. Mrs. Devereux had been instructed to wake no one and to tell the night staff there had been a plumbing issue below stairs. On the far counter, beside a silver bowl of lemons, Vincent had placed the copied complaint form Naomi had nearly been too afraid to file. The page was visible from the doorway. Deliberately. A message. Someone had pressured her because of what she knew. Someone had begun stripping away her hours, her housing, her safety. Tonight, that person would be shown one thing more. She was no longer alone. Minutes stretched. The refrigerator motor hummed. Rain whispered against glass. Naomi kept her eyes on the sink, but every nerve in her body listened toward the hall. Vincent stood near the closed pantry door, dark suit jacket off, white shirt sleeves rolled once at the forearms, still as carved stone. He looked less like a host than a verdict waiting for its hour. Then the floorboard outside gave a soft complaint. Naomi did not turn. The service door opened 3 inches, then wider. Mrs. Devereux entered first, wrapped in her gray robe, face pale with what looked like outrage. Behind her came Adrian Cross, Vincent's political fixer, tie loosened, rain still darkening the shoulders of his coat. He should not have been inside the estate at that hour, which meant he had come because he had been told something in this room could destroy him. His eyes found a paper on the counter. Then Naomi. Everything in his expression hardened. "So this is what we're doing now," Adrian said, voice low and ugly. "Dragging household help into matters above her station." Naomi lifted her chin. "My station did not invent what you did." The room went still. Vincent said nothing. That silence was the trap. Adrian stepped farther in, too fast, abandoning caution because contempt had always been easier for him than fear. "You should have taken the warning," he said to Naomi. "A job like yours is easy to replace. An apartment lease is easy to disturb. A woman without connections should know when to keep quiet." Mrs. Devereux drew in a sharp breath. The old housekeeper had spent years protecting order with polished silver and rigid schedules, but now horror flickered plain across her face. She had suspected cruelty. She had not expected confession. Naomi's fingers curled once against the counter edge. "You call my landlord." Adrian gave a thin smile. "I protected this household from scandal." "No," Vincent said at last. "You protected yourself." Adrian turned. Adrian turned with that small, offended dignity men often borrowed when they sensed power shifting away from them. The lamplight from the study cut across his cheekbone and found the sweat beginning to shine at his temple. Outside the tall windows, rain needled softly against the glass. Inside, no one moved. Even the old clock in the hall seemed to hold its breath. Naomi saw it first. Not fear, not guilt alone. Recognition. His eyes had flicked, only for a fraction of a second, toward the service passage behind the pantry door, the narrow corridor that ran past the kitchen stores and out toward the rear steps, where staff came and went unseen. It was such a quick glance that anyone less bruised by caution might have missed it. But Naomi had spent too many months surviving on fragments. Tone, timing, the angle of a shoulder, the distance between danger and escape. Her voice came low, steadier than her hands. It wasn't only the calls. Adrian's mouth tightened. Be careful what you imply. Madame Leroux looked from one face to the next, suddenly pale beneath her powder. Vincent said nothing. He only watched Naomi now, and for the first time that night, he did not interrupt. The silence gave her room. There was someone in the kitchen that night, Naomi said, after the others had gone upstairs. I heard the pantry latch. I thought it was one of the drivers taking whiskey. Her throat worked once. I was wrong. Adrian laughed, but the sound came thin and brittle. This is becoming theatrical. No, Naomi said. This is becoming true. The room went still again. She lifted one hand and pointed, not at his face, but at his right wrist. The cuff had ridden back when he turned. A faint crescent scar sat near the bone, pale and ugly, half hidden by his watch strap. In the dark, I scratched him, she said. He covered my mouth. I reached for anything I could. My nails caught skin. Her eyes never left Adrian's. The next morning, you came to breakfast wearing gloves indoors. Madame Leroux made a broken sound in her throat. Adrian's expression hardened all at once, polished civility dropping away like cracked varnish. You stupid girl, he said quietly. Vincent rose. No child script. No dramatic gesture announced it. One moment he was seated in shadow and restraint, and the next he was standing with a stillness so cold it changed the temperature in the room. Adrian took one involuntary step back. Say that again, Vincent said. Adrian swallowed, then made the mistake men like him always made. He chose arrogance over survival. She has no witness, he said. No proof that matters. And if she had kept her place, none of this would have become necessary. Necessary. The word landed like a gunshot. Vincent crossed the room in 2 steps and caught Adrian by the throat, driving him hard against the bookcase. Crystal trembled on the decanter tray. Madame Leroux gasped. Naomi flinched at the crack of wood against the wall. Adrian clawed at Vincent's wrist, shoes skidding against Persian wool, face whitening as breath failed him. At last, the mask was gone. Terror looked cleaner than respect ever had. You touched her, Vincent said, each word cut from steel. You hunted her inside my house. Adrian choked out something jagged and ugly. She was nothing. The pressure increased. Then Naomi moved. Not backward. Forward. Her hand closed around Vincent's sleeve, small against the dark cloth, but unshaking now. No, he did not release Adrian. Not immediately. The fury in him had opened so fast it looked almost inhuman, the old violence of his world rising to meet a sin it understood in its own language. The room balanced on that terrible edge. Punishment, blood, the simple final answer power preferred. Naomi's voice came stronger this time. If you do this for me, then it stops being my choice. That reached him. Slowly, with visible effort, Vincent loosened his hand. Adrian collapsed to his knees, coughing, one palm braced on the floorboards, the other clutching his bruised throat. Adrian stayed on his knees, coughing into the polished, dark floor, and for the first time that night, the room belonged neither to fear nor fury, but to Naomi. She was still standing near the study door, one hand pressed flat against the wood, as if she needed to feel something solid. The kitchen had been hours ago, but its ache still lived in her body. The locked door, the question, the unbearable gentleness of being asked what had happened by a man the whole city feared. Back then, she had only given him pieces. Enough to stop the shaking, not enough to expose the whole wound. Now she lifted her chin. It started 3 months ago, she said, and even Adrian's coughing quieted. After Mrs. Alvarez's stroke, when I began taking the late pantry inventory alone, he would wait until everyone else cleared out. He never touched me at first. He made it sound small. A joke. A compliment. A warning. Her eyes never left Vincent's. Then he told me my room over the garage wasn't part of my employment records. He said if I embarrassed him, I could lose the room and the paycheck in the same day. The lamplight held still across the bookshelves. No one moved. Naomi went on, and each sentence seemed to cost her something different. He called my landlord before he ever threatened me directly. Told him I was unstable, late on payments, a problem tenant. Then he started changing my hours without notice, so I would look irresponsible. He took cash from a grocery envelope twice and told me if I accused him, he would say I stole it. Her mouth trembled once, then steadied. Tonight wasn't the first time he blocked a door. It was just the first time I knew someone might believe me. Adrian tried to rise through his bruised breathing. She has no proof. Naomi looked at him then, and the softness people mistook for weakness was gone. Edo. From the pocket of her apron, she drew a small digital voice recorder, scratched silver, hardly bigger than a pack of gum. The third time he cornered me, I started carrying this. She held it out, but not to Vincent. To the house attorney, standing rigid by the desk, summoned earlier and forgotten in the storm of everything else. There are 7 recordings. Dates included. 2 phone calls. 1 with my landlord. The attorney took it with both hands, as if receiving evidence in a church. Adrian's face lost its color so quickly it seemed to happen beneath the skin. Vincent did not touch him again. That was Naomi's choice, and he honored it with visible strain. But power did not leave the room. It simply changed form. To the police, Vincent said. The attorney gave one sharp nod and stepped aside to make the call. Not a threat. Not a lesson handled in private. A record. Charges. Witness statements. Payroll logs. Security footage from hallways Adrian had believed were blind. The kind of removal no loyalty could reverse by morning. Adrian opened his mouth once more, but this time no one needed to silence him. He was escorted out of the study not by force, but by certainty. His future had narrowed to handcuffs, paperwork, and the end of every room he had once entered with borrowed authority. When the door shut behind him, the mansion exhaled. Vincent turned only after the sound had faded. He did not stand over Naomi now. He crossed the distance slowly and stopped an arm's length away, leaving the space hers to close or keep. In the kitchen, he said quietly, I asked who hurt you. Naomi's eyes shone, but she did not look down. A man who thought fear would keep me silent, she said. Then, after a long breath, in a house that made silence easy, the words landed where they belonged. Vincent accepted them without defense. That ends tonight. He reached into his inside pocket and placed a key on the edge of the desk between them. Not a symbol. A real one. Brass, worn, heavy.